never thought I'd find myself sitting at the head of a mahogany conference table, deciding the fate of the very son who once told me I was nothing more than a burden. Life has a peculiar way of bringing things full circle, doesn't it? 25. Years I gave to my son James, 25 years of unyielding love, sacrifice, and devotion. I worked 3 jobs when he was young, put myself through night school while he slept, and postponed every dream I ever had, just so he could have a chance at building his. When I look at him now, sitting across the table with that perfect navy suit and those anxious eyes, I hardly recognize the boy I raised. The last time we spoke, truly spoke, was 5 years ago, the night he told me he was choosing his wife Diana over me. That night changed everything. That night is the reason I'm now the CEO of Meridian Capital, the very company that will decide if his struggling tech startup gets acquired or shuttered for good. The projections for Nexus Tech aren't promising, remarks Walter, our chief financial officer, sliding another spreadsheet across the table. Third-quarter losses exceed initial estimates by nearly 40%. James's jaw tightens, but he keeps his composure. Diana, sitting beside him, doesn't bother hiding her disdain as she glares at me. She thinks I'm enjoying this, watching them squirm. Maybe a part of me is. I'd like to review the files privately, I tell the board, my voice steady despite the hurricane of emotions inside me. We'll reconvene tomorrow at 9. As everyone files out, James lingers behind. For a moment, I see a flicker of the little boy who once looked at me like I hung the moon and stars just for him. Mom, he starts, but Diana tugs at his arm. James, we need to go, she says sharply, cutting off whatever he was about to say. I watch them leave, remembering how different things once were. How did we end up here? The answer lies in what happened 5 years ago, when everything began to unravel. I was turning 60 that year, not old by modern standards, but old enough to feel the weight of decades in my bones after a lifetime of hard work. James had finally found success with his tech startup Nexus after years of struggling. I'd helped him through college, emptied my modest savings to fund his first failed venture, and worked extra hours as an administrative assistant well past when I should have retired, just to help him stay afloat during the lean years. This is it, Mom, he'd told me excitedly when Nexus finally secured its first major client. Everything's going to change now. All those sacrifices you made, they're finally paying off. I'm going to take care of you, just like I always promised. For a while, he did. He bought me a small but comfortable condo near his office in the city, invited me to dinners, consulted me on business decisions. I felt valued, appreciated, needed. Then he met Diana. Diana came from old money, the kind of wealth that spans generations and creates an invisible barrier between those who have it and those who don't. She was beautiful, polished, and educated at the finest schools. She also made it immediately clear that she found me lacking. James tells me you were a secretary? She'd asked during our first meeting, the word secretary dripping from her lips like something distasteful. Administrative assistant, I corrected gently, for the dean of admissions at Westlake University. How quaint, she replied with a smile that never reached her eyes. And no college degree yourself? I started, I explained, but had to drop out when I got pregnant with James. His father wasn't in the picture, and someone had to pay the bills. She hummed, glancing around my modest living room with poorly disguised judgment. Life is certainly about the choices we make, isn't it? From that first meeting, Diana systematically began pushing me out of James's life. It started subtly. Dinner. Invitations became less frequent. Calls went unreturned for days. And somehow I was always the last to know about important developments in James's life. Then came the engagement announcement. I found out on social media, alongside everyone else. When I called James, hurt and confused, he was apologetic but defensive. It all happened so fast, Mom, he explained. Diana's parents arranged this huge surprise party, and there were photographers From the society pages there, I meant to call you right after. I would have liked to be there, I said softly. I know, but it wasn't my call. The Whitfields have a certain way of doing things. The Whitfields have a certain way of doing things. It became the refrain of the next year, his explanation for every slight, every exclusion. I wasn't invited to the engagement party because the Whitfields have a certain way of doing things. I wasn't consulted about the wedding because the Whitfields have a certain way of doing things. And apparently, the Whitfields' way of doing things didn't include much room for a working-class mother who had sacrificed everything for her son. I tried to adapt. I bought nicer clothes than I could afford for the few wedding-related events I was invited to. I read books on etiquette and art history so I could make conversation with Diana's friends and family. I swallowed my pride and my hurt and tried to carve out a small space for myself in this new version of James's life. But no matter what I did, it was never enough. I was the pebble in Diana's perfectly polished shoe, a constant reminder of James's humble beginnings she seemed determined to erase. The breaking point came 3 months before the wedding. James had invited me to Sunday brunch at their new penthouse apartment. A peace offering, I thought. But when I arrived, it quickly became clear that this wasn't a reconciliation. It was an ambush. Mom, James said, his voice eerily formal as we sat in their immaculate living room. Diana and I have been thinking about the future, about what's best for everyone. Diana sat beside him, her hand possessively on his knee, her diamond engagement ring catching the light with every subtle movement. We think it might be better if you moved back to Meadowbrook, he continued. Meadowbrook was my hometown, a small, fading industrial city 4 hours away. I'd left it 30 years ago and never looked back. Move back? But my life is here now. My friends, my doctor, my book club. I looked at him, confused. And you're here. The thing is, Mom, he sighed, not quite meeting my eyes. With the wedding and then starting a family, we're entering a new chapter. Diana feels, we feel, that having you so close might make it harder to establish our own family traditions and boundaries. I see, I said, though I didn't, not really. How could my presence 4 miles away in a small condo interfere with their family traditions? It's not that we don't want you in our lives, Diana interjected smoothly. It's just that sometimes mothers and sons can develop unhealthy attachments, especially when there hasn't been a father figure. My cheeks burned with indignation. Unhealthy attachments? I raised him alone because his father walked out when I was 7 months pregnant. I worked myself to the bone, so James could have opportunities I never had. That's not an unhealthy attachment. That's being a parent. See, this is exactly what I mean, Diana said, turning to James. The guilt trips, the martyrdom. Martyrdom? I echoed, stunned. James looked uncomfortable but stood his ground. Mom, Diana has made some excellent points about how we need to start fresh, as our own family unit. The condo here in the city, it was always meant to be temporary. Temporary? My voice cracked. You told me it was my home for as long as I wanted it. Plans change, Diana said coolly. And honestly, with the baby coming, we'll need that space for a nanny. Baby? I whispered. You're having a baby? James at least had the decency to look ashamed. We were going to tell you today. Diana's 3 months along. I would be a grandmother, and they were asking me to move 4 hours away. The room seemed to tilt slightly. We've already found a lovely retirement community in Meadowbrook, Diana continued, pulling a brochure from a folder on the coffee table. It has everything you could need. Activities, medical care on site, other people your age. James will cover all the expenses, of course. I'm 60, not 90, I said, finding my voice again. I don't need a retirement community. I have a life here. I still work. I volunteer. Mom, James interrupted, his tone firmer now. This decision has been made. It's what's best for everyone. The condo will be put on the market next month. The condo that you bought in your name. I realized aloud, even though you said it was mine. He had the grace to look away. It was simpler that way for the mortgage. I stood up, my legs unsteady beneath me. You're asking me to leave my home, move away from my only child and grandchild, and live among strangers because your wife thinks I'm too close to you? Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Diana sighed, as if I were being unreasonable. Many families live apart. You'll visit for holidays. We'll send pictures. Visit? Like some distant relative? After everything I've done? I turned to James, searching his face for any sign of the son I thought I knew. James, please. Think about what you're saying. He stood up too, but kept his distance. I've made my choice, Mom. I'm choosing the family I'm creating with Diana. I'm choosing my future. I'm choosing Diana over you. He didn't say those exact words, but he might as well have. I see, I said, again, gathering my purse with trembling hands. Well then, I won't take up any more of your time. Mom, don't be like that. We can talk about the details. There's nothing more to talk about, I cut him off. You've made your decision. Now, I'll make mine. I walked out of that penthouse with my head held high, though my heart was shattering with every step. I didn't cry until I was alone in the elevator, and even then, I limited myself to silent tears. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of breaking me completely. I didn't go to the wedding. I sent a card with no gift and no return address. I sold or donated most of my possessions, packed what remained into my car, and drove not to Meadowbrook, but to Boston, where my college roommate Margaret had offered me her guest room until I got back on my feet. You can reinvent yourself, Margaret told me over a glass of wine that first night in Boston. 60 is nothing these days. You've got decades ahead of you. What did you want to be before life got in the way? The question stumped me. What had I wanted before pregnancy and single motherhood and survival became my entire focus? I'd been studying business administration when I dropped out of college, with vague dreams of running my own company someday. Too late for that now, I said with a sad smile. Says who? Margaret challenged. You're smart, experienced, and frankly, you have nothing to lose. Why not finish that degree? So I did. I enrolled at a local community college, transferred to a 4-year university, and graduated with honors at 63. I took an entry-level position at a small investment firm, worked my way up to analyst, then manager, then director. I discovered I had a knack for identifying undervalued companies, for seeing potential where others saw risk. By 67, I was headhunted by Meridian Capital, one of the largest investment firms on the East Coast. And then, in one of those twists of fate that seems too perfect to be coincidence, Meridian's long-standing CEO announced his retirement last year. After a 6-month search that included candidates far younger and with far more impressive pedigrees, the board selected me to take his place. At 70, I became the oldest first-time female CEO of a major investment firm in the country. The E. Irony wasn't lost on me that the son who thought I was too old and useless to live in his city was now running a struggling company that desperately needed investment. Investment that my firm controlled. The boardroom is empty now. Just me and the stack of files detailing every flaw and failing of Nexus Tech. I should recuse myself from this decision. The conflict of interest is glaring. But I won't. Not because I want revenge, though that thought has certainly crossed my mind in darker moments. No, I won't step aside because, for the first time in my life, I have real power. The power to make decisions based on merit rather than emotion. The power to show James exactly what the mother he discarded is truly capable of. My phone buzzes with a text from Margaret. Heard your son's company is on today's agenda. You okay? I stare at the message for a long moment before replying, I will be. Tomorrow, I will walk into that boardroom and make a business decision, not a personal one. I will evaluate Nexus Tech on its actual potential, not on my feelings about its founder. I will be fair but firm, compassionate but clear-eyed. I will be everything James and Diana thought I couldn't be, and whatever I decide, I will look my son in the eye when I deliver the news. Because unlike him, I can face the consequences of my choices head-on. Outside my office window, Boston's skyline glitters against the darkening sky. Somewhere in that same city, James and Diana are probably discussing strategies, making contingency plans, perhaps even rehearsing appeals to my maternal instinct. They don't realize yet that the woman they're dealing with now isn't just James's mother. I'm Caroline Mitchell, CEO of Meridian Capital, and tomorrow, they'll finally understand exactly who they pushed aside. Morning sunlight streams through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my corner office as I review the Nexus Tech files one last time. The numbers don't lie. The company has been hemorrhaging money for the past 18 months. Their innovative security software showed tremendous promise initially, but a series of development delays and a major data breach last year have damaged their reputation beyond what most startups could survive. Under normal circumstances, this would be an easy decision. Meridian doesn't rescue failing companies out of charity, but nothing about this situation is normal. My assistant knocks softly before entering. The board is assembled, Ms. Mitchell, and Mr. and Mrs. Lawson have arrived. Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, not your son or James and Diana. Emily has always been discreet that way, maintaining professional boundaries even when the situation begs for acknowledgement of the personal. Thank you, Emily. I'll be right there. I take a deep breath, smooth my charcoal gray suit, and gather the files. The weight of them in my hands feels like more than just paper. It's the weight of history, of choices made and paths not taken. The boardroom falls silent as I enter. 12 pairs of eyes track my movement to the head of the table, but I only briefly register the two that matter most. James, his face tight with anxiety, and Diana, her expression a practiced mask of confidence that doesn't quite hide the fear beneath. Good morning, I begin, my voice steady. Thank you all for your patience. I've reviewed the Nexus proposal thoroughly, and I believe I understand the full picture. Walter raises an eyebrow. And your assessment, Caroline? I place the files on the table, taking my time. Before I share my conclusion, I'd like to hear directly from Nexus leadership. The numbers tell one story, but I want to understand their vision for recovery. This isn't standard procedure, and several board members exchange glances. But no one challenges me. That's the power of the position I now hold, the deference it commands, even when I deviate from protocol. Mr. Lawson, I say, looking directly at James for the first time. Please enlighten us. James clears his throat, visibly struggling to maintain his composure. I remember teaching him how to speak in front of his third-grade class, how we practiced in front of the bathroom mirror until his nervous stutter disappeared. Now he addresses me as if I'm a stranger. Thank you for this opportunity, Ms. Mitchell, he begins, the formality like a knife between us. Nexus has faced significant challenges, but we've implemented a complete overhaul of our security protocols. Our latest version has passed every independent audit with flying colors. Yet your client list has shrunk by 60%, I note. Trust, once broken, is difficult to rebuild in the cybersecurity sector. We understand that, he continues. That's why we've developed a new pricing structure that incentivizes long-term contracts while minimizing upfront risk for clients. We're also nearing completion on a complementary product line that diversifies our offerings beyond just security software. Diana jumps in, her voice smooth and practiced. We've secured provisional interest from TechLion Ventures for a minority stake, contingent on securing a strategic partner like Meridian. Their technical advisors have validated our new direction. This is news. It wasn't in any of the reports. I glance at Walter, who shrugs slightly, equally surprised. Interesting. I say, careful to keep my tone neutral. And why wasn't this included in your proposal? The agreement was just finalized yesterday, Diana explains with a thin smile. We wanted to bring the most current information to this meeting. A convenient timing, to say the least. I wonder if it's even true or just a desperate Hail Mary. Either way, it changes the equation. May I see the letter of intent? Diana hesitates, then reluctantly slides a document across the table. I scan it quickly. It appears legitimate. TechLion is a respected venture capital firm not known for reckless investments. Their interest suggests there might be more potential in Nexus than our analysis indicated. This certainly adds a new dimension to consider, I acknowledge. But it doesn't address the fundamental issue of market confidence. Your largest clients didn't leave because of your pricing structure. They left because their data was compromised. Under your watch. James leans forward, a flash of the determination I once admired lighting his eyes. We've completely rebuilt our architecture from the ground up. What happened was inexcusable, but we've learned from it. The new system has vulnerabilities assessment protocols that exceed industry standards. Preventative measures are commendable, I counter, but they don't erase history. Why should Meridian stake its reputation on your redemption story? Because innovation rarely follows a smooth path, he replies without hesitation. Every major tech company has faced setbacks. It's how they respond that determines their legacy. His words stir something in me, pride, perhaps, at the conviction in his voice. He sounds like the idealistic young man who once worked out of my spare bedroom, fueled by nothing but ambition and instant noodles. But sentiment has no place in this room. I've worked too hard to establish myself as a clear-eyed leader to let maternal feelings cloud my judgment now. Thank you for your perspective, I say, my tone deliberately neutral. The board will take a short recess to deliberate. As the Nexus team is escorted to a waiting room, the real discussion begins. Walter immediately voices his skepticism about the TechLion letter, while our chief strategy officer, Priya, sees potential in the new product line James mentioned. The debate continues for 20 minutes, with valid points raised on both sides. I listen more than I speak, weighing each argument against my own analysis. Finally, a consensus emerges, one that aligns with what I'd already concluded. When James and Diana return, the tension in the room is palpable. I can see the slight tremble in his hands, the way Diana's knuckles whiten as she grips her portfolio. This moment will define their future, and we both know it. After careful consideration, I begin. Meridian has decided to pursue a limited acquisition of Nexus Tech. The relief that washes over James's face is immediately tempered by my next words. However, our terms differ significantly from your proposal. We're interested specifically in your intellectual property and core development team. We see value in your innovations, but not in the current management structure. Diana's sharp intake of breath cuts through the silence. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying that Meridian is prepared to acquire Nexus's technology and retain its engineering talent, but we would integrate these assets into our existing tech division. The Nexus brand would be dissolved, and current executive leadership would not be transitioning to Meridian. In business terms, it's called an acqui-hire, buying a company primarily for its talent and technology while discarding its struggling brand and management. It's a common enough practice in tech, though rarely applied so surgically. That's unacceptable, Diana sputters, her composure finally cracking. James built this company from nothing. He is Nexus. And yet Nexus is failing under his leadership, I reply calmly. Our offer preserves the jobs of 37 employees and gives your innovations a chance to thrive under more experienced management. It's more generous than most companies in your position could hope for. James hasn't spoken, his eyes fixed on the table before him. I know what he must be feeling: humiliation, rage, despair. Part of me aches for him, wants to soften the blow, somehow. But another part remembers sitting alone in my condo, reading the eviction notice he'd arranged, feeling as if the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. "We need time to consider," he finally says, his voice hollow. "Of course, you have until the end of the week." I close my portfolio with finality. This meeting is adjourned. As the room begins to empty, Diana remains seated, her eyes burning with fury. "When we're the last 3 people left?" she speaks, her voice trembling with barely controlled rage. "This is your revenge, isn't it? You couldn't stand that James chose me, chose his own life, so you engineered this whole situation. To humiliate him." I regard her calmly. "Diana, not everything is about you. This is business, not personal vengeance." "Bullshit," she hisses, abandoning her usual poise. "You've been waiting for this moment for years. The sad, rejected mother finally gets to punish the son who moved on without her." James puts a restraining hand on her arm. "Diana, don't." "No, let her speak," I say. "I'm curious to hear how I supposedly engineered your company's security breach, or forced your clients to leave, or caused your repeated product launch failures." "You know exactly what I mean," Diana continues, shrugging off James's hand. "You're enjoying this. Admit it." I stand, gathering my materials with deliberate slowness. "What I enjoy is running a successful company, something you and James clearly know little about. It's a cruel barb, and I see it land with precision." Diana flinches, as if I'd slapped her. "Mom," James says softly, "the first time he's called me that in 5 years. Can we talk? Just us?" Diana's head whips toward him, betrayal written across her features. "James!" "5 minutes, Diana. Please." She hesitates, then gathers her belongings and stalks out, pausing at the door to deliver a parting shot. "Don't. Let her manipulate you. Remember whose side you're on." When the door closes behind her, the silence between us feels both heavy and fragile, like a snow-laden branch that might crack at any moment. "Is she right?" James finally asks. "Is this punishment?" I consider lying, telling him that my decision is purely business. It would be the professional thing to do. But we're alone now, and some truths need to be spoken. "No, it's not punishment," I say carefully. But I won't pretend that our history didn't inform my perspective. I've seen how you make decisions. James, I've seen how easily you discard people who've supported you when they no longer serve your purposes. He winces. "That's not fair, isn't it? You told me the condo was mine for as long as I wanted it. Then you took it back when Diana decided she wanted the space for a nanny. You promised to take care of me after all those years I took care of you. Then you shipped me off to a retirement community across the state." "I offered to pay for everything," he protests weakly. "Yes, you were quite generous with your money," I acknowledge. "Less so with your loyalty, your respect, your simple human decency." James runs a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it makes my heart ache despite everything. "I made mistakes, I know that. But this, taking away my company, my identity, this feels excessive." "I'm not taking anything away," I correct him. "Your company is failing. The market is taking it away. I'm salvaging what can be saved. By removing me from the equation." "Yes." The bluntness of my answer seems to surprise him. He expected equivocation, perhaps, or some maternal softening of the truth. "Why not just reject the acquisition entirely?" he asks. "Why this half measure that specifically cuts me out?" I sit back down, suddenly tired. "Would you prefer that? Should I let Nexus collapse completely, taking those 37 jobs with it? Would that feel less personal to you?" He doesn't answer, which is answer enough. "The truth is, James, your software has value. Your engineers have talent. The intellectual property you've developed deserves to survive. You've created something meaningful, despite your mistakes." I pause, making sure he's really listening. "But you're not good at this. The leadership, the steady hand needed to guide a company through crisis. You never have been. How would you know? He challenges. You weren't exactly a business titan when I was growing up. The comment stings, but I don't show it. No, I was too busy raising you alone to build an empire. But I've learned a few things since then. His eyes drop, and I see a flicker of shame cross his face. I didn't mean— Yes, you did, I interrupt. And that's exactly why you're not right for this role. A good leader takes responsibility. They don't deflect, they don't blame, and they certainly don't lash out when confronted with their own shortcomings. We sit in silence for a long moment. Outside the boardroom windows, the city continues its relentless pace, people hurrying. Along sidewalks, taxis weaving through traffic, life moving forward as it always does, regardless of the small dramas playing out behind glass and steel. What if I accept your terms? James finally asks. What happens to me? Your engineers join Meridian. Your technology gets a new home. You and Diana receive a fair payment for your ownership shares, enough to live comfortably while you figure out your next venture. And that's it? 5 years building something from nothing, and I just walk away? I study my son's face, the lines that weren't there 5 years ago, the gray beginning to show at his temples, the weight of failure in his eyes. Despite everything, a mother's instinct to protect still stirs within me. There is one alternative, I say slowly, an idea forming as I speak. A probationary position within Meridian's incubator division. You'd work under our Chief Innovation Officer, helping evaluate emerging technologies. No management responsibilities, at least initially. A chance to learn what you don't know. Hope flares in his eyes, quickly followed by suspicion. Why would you offer that? You just said I wasn't good enough. I said you weren't good at leadership. That doesn't mean you don't have other valuable skills. I lean forward, holding his gaze. You've always had vision, James. You've always been able to see possibilities others miss. That's worth something if you can learn to pair it with humility and consistency. And Diana? I shake my head. Diana has no role in this scenario. Her marketing background isn't what we need, and frankly, her presence would complicate the transition. His face clouds. She's my wife. Yes, she is, I acknowledge. And you chose her over me once before. Now you have another choice to make. Stand, signaling that our conversation is over. Think about it. Talk to Diana. But remember, the offer for your position is separate from the acquisition terms. The company will be acquired either way. The only question is whether you come with it. As I turn to leave, James calls after me, his voice strangely vulnerable. How did you do it? Start over at your age? Become this? He gestures vaguely at me, at the trappings of power that now surround me. I pause at the door, considering my answer carefully. I stopped defining myself by my relationship to other people. I stopped being just James' mother, and remembered that I was Caroline Mitchell first. And it turned out that Caroline had a lot more to offer the world than anyone, including me, had realized. With that, I walk out, leaving him alone with his thoughts and his choices. As I pass Diana in the waiting area, her eyes follow me with undisguised hatred. I nod politely, professional to the end. Back in my office, I sink into my chair and finally allow myself to feel the emotional toll of the morning. My hands shake slightly as I pour myself a glass of water. Was I too harsh? Too vengeful? Did I cross the line between business judgment and personal retribution? My phone buzzes with a text from Margaret. How did it go? I type back. Offered terms. Ball in their court now. You okay? Comes her immediate reply. I consider the question carefully. Am I okay? The pain of rejection still lingers, as does the anger at how easily I was discarded. But there's something else there too, a sense of completion, of having faced something I'd been avoiding for years. I will be, I reply, echoing my response from yesterday but meaning it differently now. Whatever James decides, I've done what needed to be done. I've made the business decision that serves Meridian best while offering a path forward that honors the potential I still see in my son, despite everything. The rest is up to him. For now, I have other companies to evaluate, other decisions to make. Life doesn't stop for personal reckonings, especially not at the top. I open my laptop and turn my attention to the next item on today's agenda, leaving thoughts of James and Diana and what might have beens for another time. The work continues. And so do I. 3 days pass without any word from James. I throw myself into work, reviewing acquisition proposals for a small pharmaceutical research firm and authorizing a divestment from an underperforming retail chain. The routine of high-stakes decision-making provides a welcome distraction from the churning uncertainty about my son's decision. Emily knocks at my door late Thursday afternoon. "Ms. Mitchell, there's a Diana Lawson in the lobby insisting on seeing you. She doesn't have an appointment." I glance at my watch. It's nearly 5, and I have dinner plans with Margaret at 7. Did she say what this is regarding? She just said it was personal and urgent. Emily's expression is carefully neutral, but I can tell she's curious. Office gossip being what it is, she likely knows by now that the Nexus Tech co-founder is my estranged son. Send her up in 10 minutes, I decide. Better to face whatever storm is brewing head on. When Diana strides into my office exactly 10 minutes later, she's a study in carefully orchestrated power dressing, a crimson suit that probably cost more than my first car, hair pulled back in a severe chignon, makeup flawless despite the humid summer afternoon. But her eyes betray her, red-rimmed and shadowed with exhaustion. "Diana," I greet her, not rising from my desk. "This is unexpected." She doesn't bother with pleasantries. "You've destroyed my marriage. I hope you're satisfied." This catches me off guard. "Excuse me?" "James hasn't come home in 2 days. She says, her voice tight with controlled fury. "After your little private chat, he checked into a hotel. He's not answering my calls, just sending texts saying he needs space to think." "What exactly did you say to him?" I gesture to the chair across from my desk. "Perhaps you should sit down." I'll stand. I shrug. "Suit yourself. To answer your question, I offered James a position within Meridian's incubator division, a chance to continue working with technology without the pressures of executive management." "Without me, you mean?" she says bitterly. "You made him choose between his wife and his mother, again." "Actually, I made him choose between his professional future and his pride," I correct her. "The fact that you view yourself as an extension of his career is telling, but not my concern." Her perfectly manicured hands clench into fists at her sides. "You have no idea what we've been through together. I've supported him through everything, the long nights, the investor rejections, the constant stress. I believed in him when no one else would." "No one else?" I echo incredulously. "I remortgaged my house to fund his first venture. I worked overtime at 62 to help him make payroll during the first year of Nexus. I introduced him to half of his initial clients through connections I'd made at the university." Diana waves this away dismissively. "Ancient history. Where were you when the security breach happened last year? When investors were pulling out left and right? Oh, that's right. Building your own career. Too busy playing CEO to help your own son." The accusation is so absurd I almost laugh. Where was I? I was exactly where you and James put me, exiled from his life because I was inconvenient to your narrative. You can't banish someone and then blame them for not being there in your time of need. She paces in front of my desk, agitation evident in every movement. "This isn't about that. This is about you using your position to deliberately sabotage us. You could have given Nexus fair terms. You could have let James stay on as a figurehead. At least let him save face. At the expense of Meridian's resources and reputation? My responsibility is to this company and its shareholders, not to James's ego. "Don't pretend this is just business," she snaps. "This is revenge, plain and simple." I lean back in my chair, studying her. Behind the anger, I see genuine fear in her eyes. For all her faults, Diana truly believes she's fighting for her husband, for their life together. It's almost admirable in a warped way. "Tell me something, Diana," I say, my tone more conversational now. "Why did you push so hard to get me out of James's life? What was I really threatening?" The question catches her off guard. She hesitates, her rehearsed outrage momentarily derailed. "I didn't—" "Please," I interrupt. "We're both too intelligent for denials at this point. You systematically isolated him from me, engineered that ridiculous intervention about my moving to Meadowbrook, and convinced him that cutting ties with his mother was somehow necessary for your marriage to thrive. I'm just curious about your motivation." Diana stares at me for a long moment. Then something shifts in her expression. The polished veneer cracks, revealing something raw and surprisingly vulnerable beneath. "You don't know what it's like," she says finally, her voice quieter now. "Growing up with the Whitfield name, the expectations, the constant pressure to be perfect. Nothing I ever did was good enough for my parents. Every achievement was expected, every mistake catastrophic." She sinks into the chair she'd earlier refused, suddenly looking exhausted. "When I met James, he was different, driven but kind, ambitious but genuine. He wasn't part of my world, wasn't bound by its rules. I thought that's what I wanted." She pauses. "Then I brought him home. And your parents disapproved, I guess." A bitter laugh escapes her. "That would be putting it mildly. They treated him like he was nothing, a social climber, a nobody with a company that would probably fail within a year. My father called him your charity project when he thought James couldn't hear." I feel an unexpected twinge of sympathy. I'd experienced similar condescension from Diana's parents the few times we'd interacted. "So you needed to remake him," I surmise. "Polish away his humble origins, repackage him as something the Whitfields could accept. And I was a living reminder of everything you were trying to erase." She doesn't deny it. "You don't understand. If James was going to succeed in our world, he couldn't be seen as the son of a single mother who worked as an administrative assistant." I finish for her. "Heaven forbid." "Mock me if you want," Diana says defensively. "But social capital is real. Connections matter. The right schools, the right background, the right story, they open doors. I was trying to help James, to give him the narrative he needed. By erasing half his life. By teaching him that people are disposable if they don't fit the image you're trying to project." I shake my head. "That's not help, Diana. That's control." "It wasn't like that," she insists, but there's a flicker of doubt in her eyes now. We're building something together. A life, a future. A fantasy." I correct her gently. "And now that the fantasy is collapsing, you're looking for someone to blame." Diana stands abruptly. "I didn't come here for a psychology session. I came to tell you that if you've manipulated James into choosing your company over our marriage, you'll regret it. The Whitfields don't take kindly to interference in family matters. The threat is clear, if vague. I'm not intimidated. The Whitfields, I say slowly, have been remarkably absent during Nexus's decline. If they're so powerful, why didn't they step in when the company started failing? Why didn't they use their vaunted connections to help secure new clients after the breach?" Her silence is answer enough. "Could it be," I continue, "that once James proved he wasn't the instant success story they'd hoped to appropriate, their interest waned? That perhaps you've been left to manage both a failing company and increasingly disappointed in-laws?" "You don't know anything about my family," she says, but the fire has gone out of her voice. "I know more than you think." I reply, I know that old money like the Whitfields is often more about appearance than actual liquid assets. I know that your father's hedge fund has underperformed for 3 consecutive quarters. I know that the family estate in Hamptons just had a second mortgage taken out against it. Her face pales. How do you... I'm the CEO of a major investment firm, Diana. It's my job to know these things. The realization dawns on her slowly. You've been investigating my family? Not actively, I assure her. But when the Nexus acquisition came across my desk, I did my due diligence. Financial entanglements with major stakeholders are relevant to any potential deal. Diana sinks back into the chair, suddenly looking much younger and more vulnerable. They'll disown me if Nexus fails, she admits quietly. My father made that very clear when we missed our revenue projections last quarter. Said he wouldn't have his daughter associated with a public failure. For the first time, I feel a genuine pang of sympathy for her. Diana Whitfield, for all her sharp edges and manipulative tactics, is fighting for survival just as desperately as I once did, albeit with very different weapons. The acquisition terms are non-negotiable, I tell her, keeping my tone professional. But if James accepts the position at Meridian, it would certainly provide a more graceful narrative than outright failure. He would be joining a prestigious firm in an advisory capacity, bringing his technical expertise to a larger platform. That's a story even the Whitfields might accept. Hope flickers briefly in her eyes before suspicion returns. Why would you help me frame this positively to my family? You hate me. I don't hate you, Diana. I don't particularly like you. But that's not the same thing. I pause, choosing my next words carefully. And I don't want to destroy James. I never did. I just want him to grow up, to understand that actions have consequences and that loyalty matters. So this whole situation, offering him a position but making it clear I'm not included, that's what? A test? Call it a reality check, I say. James needs to decide who he is and what he truly values. If that's you and the world you represent, he'll reject my offer. If it's the chance to continue his technical work in a stable environment, he might accept it. Either way, it will be his choice, not mine, not yours. Diana stands again, straightening her suit jacket with an automatic gesture. And if he chooses Meridian, what then? I meet her gaze steadily. Then he and I begin rebuilding a relationship that you worked very hard to destroy. But that doesn't mean you and he can't also find a new equilibrium. Marriage isn't ownership, Diana. It's partnership. Sometimes partners pursue different professional paths. That's easy for you to say, she replies bitterly. You've never been married. The comment is meant to sting, to remind me of my supposedly incomplete life without a husband. Instead, it makes me smile slightly. No, I haven't. And yet here I am, running a multi-billion-dollar company while you're desperately trying to salvage a life built entirely on other people's approval. Funny how things turn out, isn't it? She flinches as if I'd slapped her. You really are cold. Realistic, I correct her. There's a difference. As Diana turns to leave, she pauses at the door. He loved you, you know. Even after everything, he kept your picture in his desk drawer. Would take it out sometimes when he thought I wouldn't notice. The revelation catches me off guard, a sudden ache blooming in my chest. Thank you for telling me that, I say quietly. She nods once, a gesture that's neither friendly nor hostile, merely acknowledging. Then she's gone, the scent of her expensive perfume lingering in the air behind her. I sit motionless for several minutes after she leaves, absorbing the unexpected turns of our conversation. Whatever I'd expected from Diana's ambush, it wasn't. This strange moment of reluctant understanding between us. My phone buzzes with a text from Margaret. Still on for dinner? I'm starving and there's a bottle of Pinot Noir calling our names. Absolutely, I reply, just wrapping up here. Meet you at Luciana's at 7. As I gather my things to leave, Emily appears in the doorway. Ms. Mitchell, there's a call for you online. 2. It's Mr. Lawson. My heart skips a beat. James? She nods. He says it's important. Should I tell him you've left for the day? I hesitate, torn between wanting to hear what he has to say and needing time to process my conversation with Diana. Take a message. Tell him I'll call him back first thing tomorrow. Yes, Ms. Mitchell. Emily retreats, closing the door behind her. Whatever decision James has reached, it can wait one more night. I need the clarity that only distance and a good glass of wine with an old friend can provide. Dinner with Margaret is exactly what I need. Warm, uncomplicated companionship with someone who knew me before I was either a mother or a CEO. Margaret has been my touchstone through the darkest periods of my life, never judging, always supporting, but never afraid to tell me hard truths when needed. So, she says, refilling our wine glasses as we finish our main course, are you going to tell me what's bothering you, or do I have to guess? I smile ruefully. Diana came to see me today, accused me of destroying her marriage. Margaret raises an eyebrow. Dramatic. What did you actually do? I explain the situation, James's disappearance to a hotel, his silence toward Diana, her fear of her family's reaction to Nexus's failure. You know, Margaret says thoughtfully when I finish, for the first time, I almost feel sorry for the woman. Don't be fooled, I warn. She's still the same person who orchestrated my exile from James's life. Of course she is, Margaret agrees. But now I understand her better. She's terrified of her family, of failure, of losing her identity. Fear makes people do terrible things. That doesn't excuse them. No, she concedes, but it explains them. And understanding why people hurt us sometimes helps us move past it. I take a sip of wine, letting her words sink in. When did you get so wise? She laughs. Around the same time you got so powerful. We've both come a long way from that tiny apartment we shared in college. We toast to that, and for the rest of the evening, we talk about everything except James. And Diana and Nexus, books we've read recently, Margaret's plans to volunteer in Costa Rica next spring, the new exhibit at the Museum of Fine Arts. By the time I return to my apartment, it's past 11. I kick off my shoes, pour a glass of water, and stand at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Boston glitters below me, a tapestry of lights against the darkness. Somewhere out there, James is also awake, wrestling with a decision that will shape the next chapter of his life. For the first time, I allow myself to hope that whatever he decides might include a place for me again, not as the subservient mother who exists only to support him, but as the woman I've become, complex and accomplished, and finally, fully myself. My phone chimes with an email notification. It's from James, sent just moments ago. Mom, I've made my decision. Can we meet tomorrow morning at 8 hours at the Common by the duck pond where we used to feed the birds when I was little? Just you and me. James. I read the message twice, my throat tight with unexpected emotion. The duck pond. It's been 20 years at least since we sat on that bench together, throwing breadcrumbs to the eager waterfowl. It was our special place. During the brief period we lived in a cramped apartment nearby, when James was 7 and I was working 2 jobs to keep us afloat. That he remembers it, that he's chosen it as the place to tell me his decision, feels significant. Whatever he's decided, he's acknowledging our shared past, the history that Diana tried so hard to erase. I'll be there, I type back simply. Setting my phone aside, I prepare for bed with a strange sense of calm. Tomorrow will bring whatever it brings, reconciliation or final separation, a new beginning or a definitive end. Either way, I will face it with the strength and clarity I've worked so hard to develop. As I drift toward sleep, I find myself remembering James as a child. Not the successful tech entrepreneur or the man who rejected me, but the small boy who once looked up at me with complete trust and said, "It's okay, Mom. We don't need anybody else. We've got each other. We lost that somewhere along the way, that absolute certainty in each other. Perhaps it was inevitable as he grew up and formed his own identity. Perhaps it was my fault for holding on too tightly, or his for letting go too completely. Or perhaps it was just life, messy and unpredictable, pulling us in different directions until the thread between us stretched almost to breaking. Tomorrow I'll discover if that thread still holds, or if it finally snapped under the weight of too much history, too much hurt, too many years of silence. Either way, I'll be okay. That's the gift these last 5 years have given me. The unshakable knowledge that I am complete in myself, that I can build a life of meaning and purpose without depending on anyone else's approval or presence. But oh, how I hope that thread still holds. Boston Common is peaceful at 8 in the morning, the summer day still fresh and cool before the humidity settles in. I arrive 15 minutes early, dressed more casually than I have been all week, slacks and a light blue blouse, instead of my usual power suit. Today isn't about the CEO of Meridian Capital, it's about Caroline Mitchell, mother of James Lawson. The duck pond hasn't changed much in 20 years. The same curved stone border, the same weeping willow trailing its branches near the water's edge. A few early morning joggers pass by, but otherwise the area is quiet. I sit on the familiar bench, memories washing over me. James at 7, his chubby hands eagerly throwing breadcrumbs while I warned him not to get too close to the edge. His delighted giggles when the ducks quacked and jostled for position. The way he would look up at me, face shining with simple joy, completely unaware of how tight money was that month, or how exhausted I was from working double shifts. You still sit with your back straight. I turned to find James standing a few feet away, watching me with an expression I can't quite read. He looks tired but composed, dressed in jeans and a gray sweater that makes him look younger, more like the son I remember. Old habits, I reply, with a small smile. My 4th grade teacher used to rap knuckles for slouching. He sits beside me, leaving a careful space between us. For a few minutes, we simply watch the ducks gliding across the pond's surface, their wake creating expanding ripples in the still water. I used to think this pond was enormous, James finally says, like our own private lake. You insisted there were fish as big as sharks living at the bottom, I remember, the image suddenly clear in my mind. You had an elaborate theory about how they only came out at night. He laughs softly. I forgot about that. A pause. I forgot a lot of things, it seems. The weight of those words hangs between us. I wait, giving him space to continue at his own pace. I've spent the last 3 days thinking about everything, he finally says. About Nexus, about the acquisition offer, about Diana, about us. He turns to look at me directly. I've been selfish, Mom. Worse than selfish, I've been cruel. The blunt admission catches me off guard. I expected justifications, perhaps even accusations, not this straightforward acknowledgement. Why here, James? I ask instead of responding directly to his statement. Why ask to meet at this particular spot? He gazes out at the water, considering. Because this is where we were happiest, I think. Before I cared about status or money or what other people thought. Before I started measuring my worth by external things. A small, sad smile touches his lips. And because I wanted to remind myself of who I was before I let Diana and her family convince me that my background was something to be ashamed of. And who was that? I ask softly. Someone who knew what mattered. His voice breaks slightly. Someone who would never have treated his mother the way I treated you. A lump forms in my throat. I've imagined this conversation so many times over the past 5 years. But now that it's happening, I find myself uncertain how to respond. Spoke with Diana yesterday, I say finally. She came to my office. James nods. I know. She called me afterward. What did she say? He sighs heavily. That you were manipulating me. That you were using your position to drive a wedge between us. that I needed to come home immediately and reject your offer if I cared about our marriage. And what did you tell her? That I needed more time to think. He runs a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it makes my heart ache, which didn't go over well. She accused me of already choosing you over her. Is that what you're doing? I ask, careful to keep my tone neutral. No, he says firmly. That's the point I've been trying to make to her. This isn't about choosing between you and her. It's about me finally taking responsibility for my own choices, past and present. A early morning breeze ripples across the pond, sending tiny waves toward the shore. A mother duck leads a line of ducklings along the water's edge, their tiny forms bobbing in perfect formation. I'm accepting your offer, Mom, James says quietly. The position at Meridian's incubator division. I want to learn what I don't know. I want to start over. Despite having anticipated this possibility, relief washes through me. What about Diana? I ask. She made it very clear yesterday how she feels about Nexus being acquired without you at the helm. James looks down at his hands. We talked all night. It was difficult. She feels betrayed, says I'm throwing away everything we built together. But the truth is, what we built was already crumbling, and not just because of Nexus. Your marriage, I clarify gently. He nods, pain evident in his expression. Diana and we've been pretending for a long time. Pretending that we were happy, that the company was thriving, that her family's approval was just around the corner if we could just project the right image. He looks up, his eyes meeting mine. Do you know what finally made me see it? When I realized that I was doing exactly what her parents had done to her, measuring someone's worth by appearances and status rather than character and action. What do you mean? Diana told me about your conversation, about her parents threatening to disown her if Nexus failed publicly. His expression hardens. They've been doing that her entire life. Conditional love based on performance and appearances. It warped her, made her terrified of failure, of anything that might reflect badly on the precious Whitfield name. And you think she did the same to you? I probe. We did it to each other, he admits. I bought into her world completely. I started to believe that success meant the right address, the right clothes, the right connections. And part of that new identity meant distancing myself from my unsophisticated background. The self-loathing in his voice is palpable. Including you. I absorb this in silence, watching a jogger circle the pond, headphones in, oblivious to our quiet drama unfolding on the bench. I told Diana I'm taking the position at Meridian, James continues, and that I think we need to separate, at least temporarily. She's staying with her sister for now. I'm sorry, I say, and mean it. Despite everything Diana did, I take no pleasure in their marital troubles. James gives me a sad smile. Are you? You never liked her? I didn't, I acknowledge. But I never wanted you to be unhappy, James. That's the truth. He's quiet for a moment, then says, The thing is, I don't think I even know what would make me happy anymore. I've spent so long chasing other people's definitions of success that I've lost track of my own. That, I tell him, is a very valuable realization to have at 35. Some people never get there. Is that what happened to you? He asks. When I pushed you away? You found your own definition of success? I consider this, tracing back, the path that led me from that painful Sunday brunch to this moment. Not immediately, I admit. At first, I was just trying to survive the rejection, to rebuild some semblance of a life. But somewhere along the way, yes. I stopped defining myself primarily as your mother and started remembering that I was a whole person in my own right, with my own ambitions and capabilities. I'm glad, he says sincerely. You deserve every success you've achieved, Mom. I just wish I hadn't missed witnessing it. The simple acknowledgement brings an unexpected warmth to my chest. Thank you for saying that. We sit in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching the early morning light strengthen, casting longer shadows across the grass. So what happens now? James finally asks. With Nexus? With the acquisition? The board approved the terms yesterday afternoon, I tell him. Meridian will acquire Nexus's intellectual property and retain key technical staff. The official announcement goes out Monday morning. And my role? You'll start a week from Monday. Vincent Chen will be your supervisor. He runs the incubator division. He's brilliant but demanding, and he won't cut you any slack because you're my son. In fact, he'll probably be harder on you precisely because of that connection. James nods, accepting this. Good. I don't want special treatment. I study him, seeing glimpses of the determined boy who used to tackle math problems at the kitchen table, refusing my help even when he was struggling. It won't be easy, James. You'll be starting over in many ways, taking direction instead of giving it, learning new systems, new corporate politics. I know, he says simply, but I need this. The structure, the mentorship, the chance to rebuild, my professional reputation based on actual skills rather than hype and connections. He pauses. And to be honest, I'm relieved to let go of the pressure of running a company. I was never good at the management part. No, I agree, not unkindly. Your talents lie elsewhere. In making things, not managing people, he acknowledges, with a rueful smile. I should have recognized that earlier. Another silence falls, more comfortable than the last. And what about us? I finally ask, the question that's been hovering unspoken since he arrived. Where do we go from here? James turns to face me fully, his expression earnest. I want to try again, Mom. I can't undo the last 5 years or take back the terrible things I said and did. But I want to rebuild if you're willing. He swallows. Hard. I understand if you're not. I wouldn't blame you. The vulnerability in his voice touches something deep inside me. For a moment, I see him not as the successful entrepreneur or the man who rejected me, but as my child, imperfect, struggling, but mine nonetheless. I'd like that, I say softly. But things can't go back to how they were before, James. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. I know that, he says quickly. I don't expect you to be. I don't want you to be. I want to know who you are now, the woman who climbed to CEO in her 60s, who makes billion-dollar decisions without flinching. I want to get to know my mother, as she really is, not just through the limited lens of how she relates to me. His words are exactly what I needed to hear, acknowledging both my personhood beyond motherhood and his respect for the life I've built in his absence. That sounds like a good place to start, I agree. A comfortable silence falls between us. In the distance, the city is coming fully alive, but here by the pond, it still feels like our own private world, suspended in time. I have a memory of this place, James says suddenly. It's so clear, but I don't know if it really happened or if I've just constructed it from bits and pieces. Tell me, I encourage him. It was getting dark, and we'd stayed later than usual. You were tired. I remember now that you'd worked a double shift the day before. I wanted to feed the ducks just a little longer, and you let me, even though you were practically swaying on your feet from exhaustion. His voice softens with the memory. Then it started to rain, suddenly, one of those summer downpours that comes out of nowhere. We had no umbrella, and home was 15 blocks away. I smile, the memory returning to me as well. You were wearing your favorite red sneakers, the ones with the superheroes on them. You were so worried they'd get ruined in the rain. He looked surprised. You remember? Of course I do. I picked you up and ran with you all the way to the tea station, splashing through puddles the whole way. You were laughing so hard you could barely breathe. We were soaked to the skin, he continues, the memory clearly solidifying for him now. But you weren't mad. You said, That we were having an adventure, I finish for him. And then we stopped for hot chocolate on the way home, even though it was way past your bedtime and we really couldn't afford it. That was real? He asks, his eyes brightening with recognition. I thought maybe I'd made it up or mixed it up with a movie or something. It was real, I assure him. One of those perfect moments that just happens, unplanned. James shakes his head slightly, wonder, in his expression. How did I forget these things? How did I let myself be convinced that my childhood was something to be ashamed of, something to erase? We all rewrite our histories sometimes, I say gently. We emphasize certain chapters and minimize others depending on who we're trying to. Be in the present. He nods slowly. I think I'd like to remember more, to reclaim those parts of myself, of our history together. I'd like that too. A text message chimes on my phone. It's Emily, reminding me about a 9:30 conference call that can't be rescheduled. Real life intruding on this suspended moment of reconnection. You have to go, James says, noticing my expression. I'm afraid so. Board call with our Tokyo office, he nods, understanding. The CEO's work is never done. Rarely, I agree, standing and smoothing my slacks. But I have time for breakfast if you're interested. There's a cafe around the corner that makes decent coffee. I'd like that, he says, rising to join me. But he hesitates, suddenly, looking unsure. Maybe we could make it a regular thing? Breakfast once a week? I know you're busy, but Tuesdays, I cut in before he can backtrack. I always block off Tuesdays 7 to 9 for breakfast and planning. We could meet at 8. Relief on his face is palpable. Tuesdays at 8, it's a date. As we walk away from the pond, I notice James matching his stride to mine, slowing slightly to stay alongside me rather than forging ahead as the younger, faster walker. It's a small thing, almost insignificant, but it feels symbolic of the shift between us. No longer me struggling to keep up with him and his new life, but a conscious effort at synchronization, at moving forward together. Mom, he says as we reach the edge of the common, there's something else I wanted to ask you. What's that? He looks simultaneously nervous and determined. Would you consider being there on my first day at Meridian? Not all day, obviously. And not as the CEO, just as my mother? I know it's silly, but it's not silly at all. I interrupt gently. And yes, I'll be there. The smile that breaks across his face is like sunshine after a long winter. Bright, warming, full of promise. Thank you. As we cross the street toward the cafe, I feel a weight lifting that I've carried for 5 long years. Not completely gone, but lighter, manageable. The pain of rejection hasn't vanished, nor has the wariness born from experience. Trust, once broken, rebuilds slowly, like a bone that must be reset and then carefully strengthened over time. But there's something new there too, something precious taking root in the space between us. Not the blind devotion of a mother to her child, nor the unconscious dependence of a child on his mother, but something more balanced, more mature. The beginning of a relationship between 2 adults who share a history but are now choosing, eyes open, to share a future as well. James holds the cafe door open for me, and as I pass through, I catch a glimpse of our reflection in the glass. Mother and son, both changed by time and circumstance, both bearing the marks of poor choices and painful lessons, but standing together nonetheless. It's not a perfect ending. Diana remains a complication to be navigated. The new dynamics of our professional connection will require careful boundaries. The habits of distance and defensiveness won't disappear overnight. But it's a beginning. Messy, and uncertain and hopeful, like all true beginnings tend to be. And for today, that's enough. You're fidgeting with your cufflinks again, I observe as James and I ride the elevator to the 14th floor where Meridian's incubator division is housed. Third time in the last minute. He drops his hands to his sides, looking sheepish. Is it that obvious I'm nervous? Only to someone who's known you since you used to chew your shirt collar before school presentations. The elevator doors open with a soft chime. Ready? James takes a deep breath and nods. As I'll ever be. I'd debated with myself all weekend about how to handle this moment. Too much maternal presence might undermine him before he even begins. Too little might feel like abandonment on this significant day. In the end, we'd settled on breakfast together in the Meridian Cafe on the ground floor, followed by me walking him to his division, but not staying for the formal introductions. As we step off the elevator, several employees glance our way, recognition and curiosity flickering across their faces. The news of Nexus Tech's acquisition has been public for exactly 1 week, and the additional detail that the former CEO is both joining Meridian and happens to be the son of our chief executive has fueled the corporate rumor mill to a fever. Pitch? People are staring, James mutters under his breath. They're curious, I correct him. It's human nature. They'll get over it once you prove yourself. The incubator division is modern and open concept, with glass-walled meeting rooms, clusters of workstations, and several informal lounge areas where small groups are already gathered with coffee, engaged in animated discussions. The energy is palpable, younger than the main corporate floors, more casual in both dress and demeanor. Vincent Chen, the division director, spots us immediately and approaches with quick, purposeful strides. At 42, Vincent is one of Meridian's most valuable assets, brilliant, demanding, and utterly unimpressed by status or connections. I specifically chose him as James's supervisor, precisely because he would never show favoritism based on our relationship. Caroline, good morning. He greets me with a brief nod before turning to James. And you must be Lawson. Right on time. I appreciate punctuality. Vincent, this is James. I make the formal introduction. James, Vincent Chen will be your direct supervisor. His expectations are high, but you won't find a better mentor at Meridian. Vincent gives a small, acknowledging tilt of his head at the compliment. We have orientation in 5 minutes. HR paperwork, security protocols, system access. The usual first-day bureaucracy. I'll leave you to it, I say, sensing it's time for me to step back. I turn to James. Good luck today. I'm in meetings until 7, but text me if you need anything. A flicker of anxiety crosses James's face, quickly masked. Thanks, Mom. Caroline. Ms. Mitchell. He stumbles over how to address me in this professional context. Vincent raises an eyebrow but doesn't comment on the awkward moment. Let's get started, Lawson. We've got your workstation set up in the East Wing. As they walk away, James glances back once, a mixture of determination and vulnerability in his expression. I give him an encouraging nod, then turn toward the elevator, reminding myself that this is what we both wanted, a clean professional slate for him, a chance to rebuild our relationship on more equal footing. Back in my office, I find it difficult to focus on the quarterly projections report I'm supposed to be reviewing. My mind keeps drifting to the 14th floor, wondering how James is faring, if he's feeling overwhelmed or if he's finding his footing. I force myself to stop checking the time, to trust that he's capable of navigating his first day without maternal hovering. Around noon, my assistant Emily knocks on my door. Ms. Mitchell, there's a Diana Lawson here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's being insistent. My stomach tightens. I'd anticipated this confrontation, but not quite so soon. Send her in, please. Diana enters like a storm front, elegantly dressed as always, but with a brittle quality to her. Movements that wasn't there before. There are shadows under her eyes that even expert makeup application can't completely conceal. Diana, I greet her, remaining seated behind my desk. What can I do for you? She doesn't waste time with pleasantries. You've won, Caroline. Is that what you wanted to hear? I wasn't aware we were in a competition, I reply evenly. Don't insult my intelligence, she snaps, dropping into the chair across from me. You orchestrated this entire situation. The acquisition, the job offer, all of it designed to drive a wedge between James and me. And it worked. Congratulations. Study her for a moment, noting the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her usually steady hands. Is that why you're here? To accuse me of sabotaging your marriage? I'm here because I want you to know exactly what you've done, she says, her voice tight with controlled emotion. James moved the last of his things out yesterday. He's filed separation papers. 10 years together, completely unraveled in less than 2 weeks. Despite our complicated history, I feel a genuine pang of sympathy for her. I'm sorry your marriage is struggling, Diana. Truly. But James made his own decisions. I didn't force him to accept the position here or to leave your home. You gave him an ultimatum, she insists. Choose Meridian or choose me. No, I correct her gently. I gave him an opportunity. There was nothing preventing him from both accepting the position and remaining married to you. That particular choice was entirely his, and perhaps yours. Diana laughs, a hollow sound with no humor in it. That's a convenient reframing. We both know he couldn't have both. Not with my family's expectations, not with what this looks like publicly. What it looks like, I repeat thoughtfully. That seems to be a recurring concern for you, Diana, how things appear rather than what they actually are. She flinches slightly, but rallies quickly. Mock me if you want, but perception matters in our world. The Whitfields have social and business connections going back generations. When you marry into a family like mine, there are obligations, expectations, which James apparently decided weren't worth the cost, I interject quietly. The blunt statement seems to puncture something in her. She slumps slightly, looking suddenly exhausted. He said he was suffocating, that he'd spent years trying to be someone he's not just to please me and my family. Her voice drops almost to a whisper. That he didn't even recognize himself anymore. For the first time since I've known. Diana seems genuinely vulnerable, stripped of her carefully constructed defenses. It's a startling transformation. And what did you say to that? I ask, keeping my tone neutral. What could I say? That he was right? She shakes her head slowly. The worst part is, I understood exactly what he meant. I've been doing the same thing my entire life, contorting myself to fit my parents' impossible standards. She meets my gaze directly. The difference is, I never thought I had any other choice. The raw honesty in her admission catches me off guard. In all our interactions, this is the first time I've glimpsed the real woman beneath the polished exterior. We all have choices, Diana, I say carefully, though sometimes the alternatives seem unthinkable until someone shows us they're possible. Like, you did? She acknowledges reluctantly. Starting over at 60, building a whole new life. I thought you were pathetic when James told me what happened. I couldn't imagine anything worse than being cut off from my family, from everything I've ever known. A bitter smile twists her lips. And now here I am, facing exactly that scenario. Your family has disowned you? I ask, surprised. Not officially. Not yet. She straightens her shoulders with visible effort. But Father made it abundantly clear at Sunday dinner yesterday that if the separation becomes a divorce, I shouldn't expect continued access to the family trust or my position at the Whitfield Foundation. Apparently, divorce is still a scandalous failure in their eyes, regardless of the circumstances. I'm silent for a moment, absorbing this. Despite everything Diana has done, there's something deeply troubling about her parents' conditional love. Their willingness to discard their own daughter for failing to maintain appearances. What will you do? I ask finally. She looks genuinely lost, an expression I've never seen on her face before. I don't know. I've never been on my own. Never had to be. She hesitates, then adds with surprising candor, I'm not sure I know how. An unexpected thought occurs to me. Diana, what did you do at Nexus? Specifically, I mean. She seems thrown by the abrupt change in topic. I was Chief Marketing Officer. I handled branding, investor relations, client outreach. Were you good at it? The question appears to catch her off guard. She blinks rapidly, then draws herself up with a flash of her old confidence. I was excellent at it. Our client acquisition rate was triple the industry average in the first 2 years. Before the security breach, we had a waiting list of companies wanting to work with us. That's what I thought, I murmur, an idea taking shape. Your resume landed on my desk yesterday. I assume James doesn't know you applied? Her cheeks flush slightly. It was a desperate move. I didn't expect you to actually consider it. I wasn't going to, I admit. But now I'm curious. Why apply to Meridian, of all places? There must be dozens of firms that would snap up a marketing executive with your credentials and connections. Diana looks down at her hands. Because I wanted to understand, she says quietly. What James sees in this place, in you. What was worth throwing away everything we built together. She looks up again, her expression a complex mixture of defiance and vulnerability. And because I thought it would infuriate you honestly, I can't help but smile at her candor. At least you're honest about that part. So, you're not considering me for the position? She asks, a hint of resignation in her voice. I didn't say that. I lean back in my chair, studying her thoughtfully. Meridian has an opening in our client relations department. Not marketing specifically, but adjacent. The pay would be less than you're accustomed to, and you would report to a director, not directly to me. Diana stares at me, clearly struggling to process what she's hearing. You're offering me a job? After everything? I'm considering it, I clarify. On several conditions. Which are? First, you would be on probation for 6 months, like any new employee. Second, you would have no contact with James during work hours. He's in a completely different division and building, so that shouldn't be difficult. Third, and most importantly, you would need to earn your position on merit alone. No leveraging of family connections, no special treatment. She's silent for a long moment, absorbing these terms. Why would you do this? She finally asks, her voice barely audible. You hate me. I shake my head slowly. I don't hate you, Diana. I've resented you, been angry with you, even pitied you at times. But hate requires more energy than I'm willing to devote to someone else's choices. I pause, considering my next words carefully. And I believe in second chances. I've needed enough of them in my own life to recognize when someone else might benefit from one. Diana looks genuinely stunned, her carefully constructed mask completely fallen away. I don't know what to say. You don't need to decide right now, I tell her. Think about it. This isn't charity or manipulation. It's a legitimate opportunity that you're qualified for. But it would mean starting over in many ways, building a professional identity separate from both the Whitfield name and your marriage. She stands, gathering her composure with visible effort. I'll consider it. Thank you for not being what I expected. Life rarely is, I reply. That's what makes it interesting. After Diana leaves, I sit motionless for several minutes, turning over our conversation in my mind. Of all the scenarios I'd imagined for today, offering Diana Lawson a position at Meridian wasn't among them. I'm not entirely sure it's the right decision, but something about her genuine vulnerability, the glimpse of the person beneath the perfect facade, had resonated with me in an unexpected way. My phone buzzes with a text from James. First day. Going well. Vincent is brilliant, but terrifying. Having lunch with the team. Talk later? I smile at the brief update, relieved that he's integrating with his new colleagues. Sounds good. Dinner at my place tonight if you're free? 8 p.m. His response comes quickly. I'll bring wine. The good stuff this time, not the cheap bottles I used to pretend were fancy. The easy banter feels like a small miracle after 5 years of silence between us. I return to my quarterly projections with renewed focus, pushing thoughts of both James and Diana to the back of my mind. There will be time to navigate those complicated waters later. That evening, as I prepare a simple dinner in my apartment, I find myself reflecting on the strange turns life can take. A year ago, I was focused entirely on my career, having accepted that my relationship with James was irreparably broken. Now here I am, cooking his favorite pasta dish, with a son who seems genuinely committed to rebuilding our connection, and his estranged wife potentially joining the company. The doorbell rings precisely at 8. James stands there, a bottle of wine in each hand and an endearingly uncertain expression on his face. I wasn't sure if you still prefer red or if that's changed too, he explains, holding up both bottles. So I brought options. Some things. Don't change, I assure him, accepting the red wine with a smile. Come in. Tell me about your first day. Over dinner, James describes his initial impressions of the incubator division, the innovative projects they're working on, the caliber of the team, Vincent's intimidating but brilliant leadership style. He speaks with an enthusiasm I haven't heard from him in years, his natural passion for technology shining through without the weight of executive responsibilities dampening it. Vincent didn't cut me any slack, he says, helping himself to more pasta. Made it very clear that my background with Nexus was irrelevant. Previous failures don't interest me, he said. Show me what you can do now. That sounds like Vincent. I agree. He's tough but fair. If you earn his respect, you'll have it for life. James takes a sip of wine, his expression turning more serious. I saw Diana today. Well, I saw her car in the visitor parking area. Was she here to see you? I consider how much to share about our conversation. She was. She's struggling with the separation, as you might expect. He sets down his glass carefully. Did she ask you to intervene? To convince me to come back? No, I say truthfully. I think she realizes that ship has sailed, at least for now. I hesitate, then decide transparency is the best approach. She actually applied for a position at Meridian. I'm considering offering her one in client relations. James's fork freezes halfway to his mouth. Your what? It's a completely different department, different building, I clarify quickly. You wouldn't need to interact with her professionally. At all. He sets his fork down slowly. I'm not worried about that. I'm just surprised. I thought you'd be the last person to consider hiring Diana. So did I admit. But people can surprise you sometimes, even themselves. She's very good at what she does, James says after a moment. Beneath all the social climbing and status anxiety, she's actually brilliant with people, with understanding. What motivates them? That's what her resume suggested, I acknowledge. And Meridian evaluates candidates on their skills and potential, not their personal connections or history. James studies me with a thoughtful expression. You've really changed, Mom. 5 years ago, you might have taken satisfaction in Diana's struggles after how she treated you. Now you're considering giving her a lifeline. I've had time to gain perspective, I say simply. Holding on to resentment takes energy I'd rather direct elsewhere. And everyone deserves a chance to redefine themselves. I, of all people, should understand that. Even Diana? He asks with a small smile. Even Diana, I confirm. Though I admit, it's still a bit surreal to contemplate. James laughs, the sound warming the room. Life is nothing if not unpredictable. A month ago, I was the CEO of a failing startup with a marriage that felt more like a professional partnership than a relationship. Now I'm starting over professionally, separated from my wife and having dinner with the mother I haven't spoken to in 5 years, who happens to be my boss's boss's boss. When you put it that way, it does sound like the plot of a particularly convoluted novel. I agree, sharing his laugh. As we clear the dishes together, moving around my kitchen with a comfortable familiarity that feels both old and new, I'm struck by how much can change in such a short time. The wounds from those 5 years of estrangement haven't magically healed. There are still moments of hesitation between us, topics we carefully navigate around, trust that needs to be rebuilt step by step. But there's something solid forming. 2. A foundation for whatever comes next. I have something for you, James says as we settle in the living room with coffee. He pulls a small wrapped package from his jacket pocket and hands it to me. I unwrap it carefully to find a framed photograph, one I haven't seen in decades. It shows James at about 8 years old and me in my late 20s, both of us with ice cream cones at the beach, laughing as the waves crash behind us. My hair is blowing across my face and James is missing his 2 front teeth. Where did you find this? I ask, my throat suddenly tight with emotion. In a box of old photos I kept in the back of my closet, he admits. Things I couldn't bring. Myself to throw away even when Diana suggested we purge unnecessary memorabilia during our last move. He pauses. I had it restored and reprinted. The original was pretty faded. I trace the edge of the frame, remembering that day with perfect clarity, the one splurge we allowed ourselves during a summer when money was especially tight. We'd saved change in a jar for weeks just to afford that day trip. Thank you, I say softly. This means a lot. I know it doesn't make up for everything, James says, his voice equally quiet. But I wanted you to know that even during those years when I was trying to erase where I came from, there were parts of our life together I couldn't let go of, didn't want to let go of. I place the photo on my coffee table, positioning it where I'll see it every day. It's a good start, I tell him. A very good start. Later, after James has gone home to his newly rented apartment, I stand at my living room window, gazing out at the city lights. The framed photo sits on my coffee table, a bridge between past and present, between loss and tentative renewal. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, decisions about Diana's potential role at Meridian, the ongoing complexities of having James as both son and employee, the 1,000 small choices that shape a life being rebuilt. But tonight, I allow myself to simply appreciate how far we've come from the bitter estrangement of 5 years, the painful rejection that once seemed permanent and unforgivable. Some broken things stay broken, but others, with care and time and willingness, can be remade into something new, different from what they were before, bearing the visible seams of repair, but perhaps stronger at those very points where they once cracked apart. 3 months. Later fall has transformed Boston into a canvas of crimson and gold. From my office window, the trees lining the common create a patchwork of autumn splendor against the backdrop of historic architecture and modern skyscrapers. The seasonal shift seems fitting, a visible reminder that change, while sometimes jarring, often brings its own kind of beauty. Ms. Mitchell, your 10 o'clock is here, Emily announces over the intercom. Send her in, please. The door opens and Diana enters, looking markedly different from the woman who stormed into my office 3 months ago. Her clothing is still impeccable, but less ostentatious. A simple navy suit rather than designer labels, her jewelry minimal and elegant rather than statement pieces. But the most striking change is in her demeanor, more grounded, less brittle, her movements suggesting purpose rather than performance. Good morning, Caroline, she greets me, taking a seat across from my desk with a portfolio in hand. Thank you for making time for this. Quarterly reviews are standard for all probationary employees, I remind her, though we both know this meeting carries additional weight given our complicated history. Sharon tells me you've been doing excellent work in client relations. A small, genuine smile touches Diana's lips. I've been enjoying it more than I expected. It's challenging in ways marketing at Nexus never was. Less about surface impressions and more about substantive relationship building. I glance down at the performance report on my desk. You've brought in 3 new institutional clients in your first 90 days. That's impressive by any standard. Thank you, she says, accepting the compliment without the self-aggrandizement that once characterized her interactions. I've been applying what I learned from Nexus's mistakes. Authenticity matters more than appearance. It took me too long to understand that. Better late than never, I offer with a slight smile. Diana opens her portfolio and slides a document across my desk. This is my proposal for expanding our outreach to mid-size family offices. They're an underserved segment in our current client base, but their collective assets under management represent a significant opportunity. I scan the proposal, noting the thorough research and strategic approach. This is good work, Diana. Thoughtful and practical. I'd like to implement a pilot program targeting 20 select prospects, she continues. Low investment upfront, potential for substantial returns within 2 quarters. We discuss the specifics for several minutes, the conversation remaining professionally focused and productive. It still feels surreal sometimes, working with the woman who once orchestrated my estrangement from my son. But watching her genuine engagement with the work, her evident desire to prove herself on merit rather than connections, I find myself increasingly convinced that people can indeed change when given the right motivation and opportunity. As our meeting concludes, Diana hesitates before standing. There's something else I wanted to discuss, something personal. I lean back slightly, an unspoken invitation to continue. I've signed the divorce papers, she says quietly. James should receive them today, though not entirely surprising given the trajectory of their separation. The finality of this step registers as significant. I see. How are you feeling about that? Diana looks out the window for a moment, her expression contemplative. Sad, of course. 10 years is a substantial investment. But also relieved, in a way. She turns back to me. We weren't making each other happy. We were making each other into people we didn't recognize or particularly like. That's an insightful assessment, I acknowledge. My parents have officially cut me off, she continues with a small, humorless laugh. Apparently Divorce Plus taking a subordinate position at Meridian rather than returning to the family business constitutes an unforgivable breach of Whitfield standards. I'm sorry, I say, and mean it. Family rejection is painful, regardless of how complicated the relationship. She shrugs, a gesture that doesn't quite mask the hurt beneath. For the first time in my life, I'm supporting myself completely. My apartment is small, my wardrobe is limited, and I'm learning to cook instead of ordering in every night. A genuine smile breaks through. It's terrifying and liberating in equal measure. That's often how independence works, I observe. The fear and freedom come together. Diana gathers her materials, preparing to leave. One more thing, she says, her tone suddenly more hesitant. James and I met for coffee last weekend, just to talk. It was civil. Better than civil, actually. Glad to hear that, I say carefully, uncertain where she's going with this. We're not reconciling, she clarifies quickly. That chapter is closed for both of us, but we're trying to find a way to honor what was good between us without holding on to the rest. She pauses. He speaks very highly of you, of the relationship you're rebuilding. I think in some ways, what happened between the 3 of us has ultimately led each of us to become more authentic versions of ourselves. The observation is surprisingly profound, coming from a woman who once seemed to value appearance above all else. Perhaps it has, I agree. After Diana leaves, I find myself reflecting on her words. When I orchestrated the acquisition of Nexus and offered James a position at Meridian, I was motivated primarily by business logic, overlaid with a desire for some kind of resolution to our estrangement. I never anticipated that those decisions would catalyze such profound transformations. Not just in my relationship with James, but in Diana's entire life trajectory and sense of self. My phone rings, interrupting my musings. It's Margaret. "Have you seen the news?" she asks without preamble. "What news? Check your email. I just sent you a link." I open my inbox to find Margaret's message with a subject line, "Your son is making waves." The linked article is from a respected technology journal. Former Nexus CEO develops breakthrough security protocol at Meridian Incubator. Pride blooms warm in my chest as I scan the article. James, working with a small team within Vincent's division, has developed an innovative approach to data security that's drawing significant attention in the tech world. The piece praises his technical acumen while noting that the work represents a successful pivot from his executive role at Nexus to a more hands-on technical position. "I knew he had it in him," I tell Margaret. "He just needed the right environment." "You created that environment," she points out. "Don't forget your role in this success story." "I just opened a door," I demur. "He walked through it and did the work." "Always deflecting credit," Margaret sighs. "Some things never change." After we hang up, I send James a brief message. "Just saw the article. Congratulations. Proud of you." His reply comes quickly. "Thanks, Mom. Vincent's already talking about patent applications. Still on for dinner Tuesday? Wouldn't miss it." I respond. Our weekly dinners have become a cherished routine, a steady rhythm of reconnection as we carefully rebuild what was broken. Sometimes we talk about work, sometimes about his ongoing divorce process, sometimes about nothing of consequence at all. Last week, we spent an entire evening looking through old photo albums I'd unearthed from storage, laughing over forgotten memories and marveling at how young we both once were. There are still occasional awkward moments, brief silences laden with the ghosts of those 5 lost years. But each week, they grow fewer and less weighted, gradually replaced by the comfortable shorthand of people who know each other well and are learning to know each other again in new ways. At the day's end, I find myself drawn not to my usual direct route home but toward the duck pond in the common, where James and I had our first real conversation after years of silence. The autumn light is fading, casting long shadows across the grass, the water reflecting the fiery colors of the surrounding trees. I sit on our bench, watching a mother and young daughter feeding the ducks, the child's delighted giggles carrying across the water. The scene stirs memories, not just of James at that age, but of myself too. A young single mother terrified of failing the child who depended on me, yet determined to give him every opportunity I could manage. "I thought I might find you here." I look up, startled to see James standing a few feet away. "Aren't you supposed to be celebrating with your team?" I ask, surprised. The article mentioned a major milestone reached. He shrugs, settling beside me on the bench. "We had champagne in the lab. Very civilized. Very brief." He grins. "Vincent doesn't believe in extended celebrations. Says they lead to complacency." He's not entirely wrong, I acknowledge with a small smile. We sit in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the ducks glide across the pond's surface, the little girl and her mother gathering their belongings as twilight deepens. "Diana signed the divorce papers," James says finally. "My lawyer called this afternoon." "I know," I admit. "She mentioned it in our meeting this morning." He nods unsurprised. "How is she doing? Really?" "Better than might be expected. Finding her footing." I glance at him curiously. "You still care about her welfare. 10 years together doesn't disappear overnight," he says simply. "I want her to be okay, even if we couldn't make each other happy." He pauses. "Did she tell you her parents have cut her off?" "She did." James shakes his head, a mixture of anger and sadness in his expression. The Whitfields and their precious reputation. You know what's ironic? If I'd actually become the success story they wanted, if Nexus had thrived and gone public, they'd have overlooked every deficiency in my background. But the moment failure looked likely, suddenly my lack of pedigree became unforgivable. People who value status above all else rarely prove reliable when status is threatened, I observe. I feel guilty sometimes, he admits quietly. About Diana, I mean. I knew what I was getting into when we married. The social expectations, the performance aspects. I played my part willingly, even enthusiastically. Then I changed the rules mid-game and left her scrambling. You both made choices, I remind him gently. And from what I've observed, Diana is discovering strengths she never knew she had, precisely because those external supports were removed. He considers this, then nods slowly. Maybe that's true for all of us. The statement hangs between us, profound in its simplicity. All three of us, James, Diana, and myself, have been stripped of identities we once clung to, forced to rebuild, from what remained when the external trappings fell away. I got a call from TechLion Ventures today, James says after a moment. They're interested in our security protocol, want to discuss potential applications. That's the firm that almost invested in Nexus, I recall. The same. Funny how things come full circle. He turns to me, expression suddenly earnest. I wouldn't be here without you, Mom. Not just at Meridian, but here. Finding my way back to work that actually fulfills me, to being someone I can respect when I look in the mirror. You did the hard part yourself, I tell him. I just created an opportunity. No, he says firmly. It was more than that. You could have shut the door completely after how I treated you. You could have let Nexus fail entirely. You could have taken satisfaction in watching Diana and me crash and burn. No one would have blamed you. That would have been a hollow victory, I reply. Most people would have taken it anyway. He reaches over and takes my hand, the gesture so reminiscent of him as a little boy that my heart constricts. You're extraordinary. You know that? To build the life you have now after being cast aside the way you were. To find the generosity to help the very people who hurt you. I'm just a person who learned some difficult lessons, I demur. Uncomfortable with his praise, but touched by it nonetheless. A remarkably stubborn person, he corrects with a small smile. Who taught me that it's never too late to start over. To become someone better than you've been. Twilight has deepened around us. The pond now a dark mirror reflecting the first emerging stars. A slight chill permeates the air, autumn asserting itself more definitively as day slips into night. We should head home, I say, rising from the bench. It's getting cold. James stands too, but hesitates before we start walking. I've been thinking about something, about names. Names? I echo, puzzled. I've been James Lawson for 10 years. Took Diana's surname when we married. Part of that whole reinvention process, becoming someone new, someone better. He meets my gaze directly. I'd like to go back to Mitchell, to your name, my real name. The simple statement catches me completely off guard, emotion rising swift and unexpected in my throat. James, you don't have to. I want to, he interrupts gently. I was James Mitchell for 25 years before I was James Lawson. It's who I am, who I've always been, underneath everything else. I can't speak for a moment, too moved by what this symbolic gesture represents. Not just a return to his original identity, but a public acknowledgement of our connection, our shared history. I'd be honored, I finally manage. We walk toward the eye. Park exit side by side, our pace synchronized without conscious effort. The city around us hums with evening activity, people heading home from work, meeting friends for dinner, living their countless separate lives that occasionally intersect. in ways both mundane and profound. What about you? James asks as we reach the street. Any big plans for the weekend? Dinner with Margaret tomorrow, I reply. And I'm thinking about taking a pottery class on Sunday afternoons. Always wanted to try it. Pottery? He sounds surprised but pleased. I didn't know that about you. There's probably a lot we still don't know about each other, I point out. We have time to discover it now. We do, he agrees, flagging down a taxi. Need a ride? I shake my head. I think I'll walk. It's a beautiful evening. He hesitates, then hugs me. A quick, almost shy, embrace that nonetheless contains genuine warmth. See you Tuesday then. I'm making dinner this time. Fair warning, my cooking skills remain questionable at best. I'll bring antacids, I promise with a laugh. As his taxi pulls away, I begin my walk home, savoring the crisp evening air and the simple pleasure of movement. 5 years ago, I couldn't have imagined this moment. Not just reconciled with my son, but genuinely connected, building something new and honest between us. Nor could I have imagined Diana's transformation from antagonist to something approaching, an ally, finding her own path separate from both her controlling family and her failed marriage. Life rarely follows the narratives we construct for it. People we dismissed as villains reveal unexpected depths. Situations we experienced as devastating become catalysts for growth. Relationships we thought irrevocably broken find new configurations that allow for healing. My phone buzzes with a text from Vincent. Your son's protocol is genuinely groundbreaking. Infuriating that someone so new to the division has produced something this significant. He clearly inherited your aptitude for innovation. I smile at the backhanded compliment, so characteristic of Vincent's communication style. But it's the casual acknowledgement of inheritance, of a connection between James's abilities and my own, that warms me most deeply. For years, Diana and her family worked to erase James's connection to me, to rewrite his history as if his life began when he entered their world. Now that connection is not only acknowledged but celebrated, seen as an asset rather than a liability. Some distances cannot be crossed, some wounds never fully heal. Diana and I will likely never be friends in any conventional sense. Too much. History stands between us. The 5 years James and I lost can never be recovered. The hurt inflicted during that time never completely erased. The Whitfields will probably never recognize what they've lost in rejecting their daughter for choosing authenticity over appearance. But life continues, imperfect and unpredictable, and occasionally beautiful in its very messiness. We make choices, face consequences, adapt and grow, or don't. We hurt each other, heal each other, surprise each other with both cruelty and kindness. We build and rebuild, letting go of what no longer serves us, holding fast to what matters most. I reach my apartment building as true darkness settles over the city, the night sky obscured by urban light, but beautiful nonetheless. Tomorrow brings another day at Meridian, more decisions to make, more challenges to navigate. But tonight, walking through the familiar lobby toward the elevator, I feel a deep contentment that has nothing to do with professional accomplishments or financial security. I am Caroline Mitchell, CEO of Meridian Capital, mother of James Mitchell, former administrative assistant, current mentor to Diana Lawson, friend to Margaret Sullivan, and a woman who at 72 is considering taking up pottery just because it interests her. All these identities coexist within me, none defining me completely, all contributing to the complex, imperfect person I continue to become. Not a happily ever after ending, perhaps. Life rarely provides those outside of fairy tales, but a good place to be nonetheless. Present in my own life, connected to those who matter most, open to whatever comes next. And really, what more could anyone ask of a life well lived?